The manufacturing and distribution of malt beverages, wine, and spirits is big business in Kentucky. Based on the 2007 census, this industry accounted for $871 million in annual sales with 1,711 wholesale distribution jobs and a total payroll of $70.4 million. This does not include jobs related to the retail distribution of these products, such as grocery stores, bars, restaurants, and specialized stores. The malt beverage, wine, and distilled spirits industry is proud to say that they collected over $112 million in wholesale taxes on behalf of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Kentucky law mandates the use of a three-tiered system. The first tier, suppliers, must sell to the second tier, wholesalers, who then supply the third tier, retail outlets. In 1982, John Y. Brown Jr. reached out to the Kentucky malt beverage, wine and spirits manufacturing and distribution industry and asked for help. Prior to 1982, Kentucky had a retail tax on malted beverages, wine, and spirits. However, the revenue cabinet was experiencing tax leakage and retail tax collection issues from the sale of these alcoholic beverages. One of the main issues was that government was having a difficult time collecting retail taxes from bootleggers.
Well, the main thing that I can remember, I think it was Terry Mann and I had a bill, because what the problem was, we were trying to get our tax on alcoholic beverages, and we were having problems with a lot of the bootleggers. They wouldn't pay the tax, and so there was no tax. And there was a lot of retailers, and I don't say a lot, I don't know how many, but there were enough that it became a problem that they would say, okay, they're going to keep the price down. They just didn't collect it, and nobody was after them. And we decided that if we had a bill that you cut the snake off by cutting its head off, not its tail. So we had a bill that would say, okay, we're going to let the wholesaler put the tax on, and then whoever buys it from them is going to be paying that tax. Now, if they don't want to pass it on, that's their problem. And it was a percentage, and that was the bill we passed. And I thought it worked really well until I'm hearing that they put a lot more taxes on.
Governor Brown consulted with the industry and asked that the tax be removed from retail sales and moved to the wholesale sale of goods. In return, government agreed not to place a retail tax on the sale of malt beverages, wine, and spirits. The governor also asked that the malt beverage, wine, and spirit wholesalers collect the taxes on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Well, once we sat down and really talked to them and said, look, we want you to work with us. We don't want to out-tax anybody. We don't want to put anybody out of business, but we've got to find a way to get this in, because it wasn't coming in the way it should as far as the tax. And they were very, very fair with it. They said, this is fine.
In 2006, Kentucky raised its wholesale tax percentage from 9% to 11%. Then, in 2009, a new 6% retail tax was introduced and implemented to the sale of malted beverages, wine, and spirits. Taxes on malt beverages, wine, and spirits has increased over 88% since 2006. Presently, malted beverages, wine, and spirits are triple taxed. This does not even take into consideration the federal and local taxes that are also levied upon them. There's a straight 11% tax on malt beverages, wine, and spirits. There is then an excise tax on the wholesale sales calculated differently. For beer, the excise tax is $2.50 per barrel, wine is 50 cents per gallon, and for distilled spirits, taxes are $1.92 per gallon. Distilled spirits also receive an additional tax of 5 cents per case sold. Then, there is a blanket 6% retail sales tax on all three types of beverages.
Most people haven't thought about it, don't realize that Kentucky is actually one of the most poorest states in the United States. If you think about how open our borders are, we are bordered by, I believe, 7 states. Only Missouri and Tennessee have more border states. So there's plenty of opportunities, if you don't like the price in one state, to buy it in an adjacent state.
According to the 2010 census, over 56% of Kentucky's population lives in a county along a border with another state. 44% of the state's total population is located on the northern border along the Ohio River. Since the implementation of the 6% retail sales tax in 2009, the sales of cases of beer have seen a 6.4% decrease. Consumption of beer on a national scale has also seen a slight decrease. However, when you compare the decrease of national beer consumption versus Kentucky's rate, it appears Kentucky has seen a 2.05% decrease from 2007 to 2010. Based on actual tax receipts in 2011, we expect the trend to continue.
The most dramatic effect was on malt beverages, on beer. And we absolutely have seen our sales fall. They've never recovered. I don't think anyone else in northern Kentucky or the other border states has ever recovered on malt beverages. And we're keeping Ohio dollars in Ohio that used to come over here, and we're actually seeing Kentucky customers buying their beer in Ohio and bringing it back to Kentucky.
There's also been an adverse effect on wine sales. Wine sales has been growing nationally and also in Kentucky. However, wine sales growth has not been on par with national averages and, more importantly, most of our bordering states. According to a study performed by Dr. Coombs, an economist with the University of Louisville, the industry has lost about 153,000 gallons of wine sales annually from 2007 to 2010. Based on 2011 Kentucky tax receipts, it appears as this trend is continuing.
We knew that we were going to have trouble with that dramatic an increase when we put that tax upon a tax upon a tax. So in our case, our individual business case, we actually instituted some special case discounts that we had not given before. We went to a 10% discount from 5 on solid cases. We added a 5% mixed case discount, and that's all well and good, but that cut into our profit margin. There's no two ways around it. Our profit margin 2009 went down. That helped us stabilize a little bit in terms of customer counts, but our gross profit went down. And that was our most dramatic effort that we made to try and counter this, to just try and hold our business together and keep these employees working.
I also looked at wine sales because those same tax increases have applied to wine. And wine consumption has actually been, the trend is up in Kentucky and around the country, but our rate of growth decelerated after these taxes went into place. And it looks to be the same pattern as for beer, and it's about a 3% annual drop in sales volume in Kentucky after the taxes went into effect, whereas beer was a little over 2%.
In total, there's been a reduction of 2.3 million cases sold annually in Kentucky between 2007 and 2010, resulting in nearly $32.2 million in lost revenue. This also has resulted in a loss of 63 wholesaling jobs, accounting for $2.6 million in payroll. This doesn't even take into consideration the jobs lost at a retail level, such as grocery stores, specialty wine and beer stores, restaurants, and other similar venues. When you make an apples-to-apples comparison of tax rates in 12 nearby states, Kentucky has the highest wine tax rates, the 4th highest taxes on malted beverages, and the 6th highest taxes on spirits. More importantly, Kentucky's taxes are significantly higher than other bordering states.
Now, one thing that has popped up, and this as part of this study and some other studies, I've actually looked at Kentucky's taxation of alcohol compared to other states. The states that specialize in beer, where the main headquarters and production facilities are, like Colorado and Wisconsin, they have the lowest beer taxes in the country. So they encourage their beer industry by having very low taxation in Colorado, Wisconsin, Missouri. Kentucky is in the top 10, certainly, in beer taxation. In wine, Kentucky is #1 in taxation. We have the very, very highest taxation rate on wine of any state. And by the way, with wine, the 2 top states, I believe, are California and New York for wine production. They have the lowest taxation rates on wine. When it comes to distilled spirits, Kentucky is dominant. Kentucky and Tennessee are the top 2 in terms of, because of bourbon and Tennessee whiskey and so on. Kentucky actually accounts for 95% of all bourbon produced in the world. We have something like 35% of all the distilling jobs and payroll in the United States in Kentucky, but we still, unfortunately, tax it pretty heavily at the retail level, which sends a bad signal to our distillers in the state.
You know, everybody needs to pay their fair share, and taxes, nobody loves them. Nobody does, but there's no free lunch, so you got to pay some taxes. But it shouldn't be one group paying all the taxes. There's you know, pass it around a little bit. Let everybody get their share of it. And I think that's, from my understanding, that there's been taxes put on under 2 different governors, and it's on the retail, which that's what we shied away from. And it just doesn't seem right that somebody says, okay, now we're looking for tax and we're just going to go back to you again and kill the goose that laid the golden egg, and then you don't have any golden eggs, and that's not good.
Kentucky's malt beverage, wine, and spirits industry, especially along our border regions, can no longer afford increased taxes without risk of further deterioration of sales and job losses. As a Commonwealth, we must align our tax policy and even consider reducing taxes to not only change these negative trends, but to also let a signature industry prosper and create new jobs.